So you spent 12 years transforming the Queen's Museum.
Museums in general, and particularly in the United States, have a problem, which is that they're very elitist institutions. Yeah, but the problem is AI is just getting started. Who gave the instructions to the AI?
Welcome to Curator Spotlight, a new series from Elisium Art. I am Sylvia Barrero, co-founder of Elisium, where we champion regional artists globally, especially across Latin America, Africa, and India. Our vision is to democratize art collecting. Today, we launched this series with a true giant of cultural policy, Thomas Finkelpearl. His career has shaped the very definition of public art. He is the former director of Queen's Museum, where he redefined community engagement and oversaw a massive 68 million renovation. He then served as a commissioner of the NYC Department of Cultural Affairs, DCLA, driving the city's largest cultural budget with a landmark focus on equity. Intellectually, his work defines the field of socially engaged art, notably through his influential books, Dialogues in Public Art, and What We Made. Tom, thank you so much for joining me today for this important conversation.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'm going to start with the questions. I'm going to read them, and please feel free to add any information you feel like. So you spent 12 years transforming the Queen's Museum. What single aspect of that transformation, being the physical expansion or focus on immigrant communities, was the most challenging to execute?
I think museums in general, and particularly in the United States, have a problem, which is that they're very elitist institutions. I mean, we have very, very successful museums here in New York City, but once you get out of the main, Manhattan institutions like the Metropolitan Museum, which, by the way, I love very much. I don't want to appear to be critical of them that. Then you have these institutions which are in low-income communities outside of the center. The Queen's Museum was one of those. It was a perfectly well-funded institution, but it had the issue that it wasn't connecting deeply enough with the local audiences. So I think that the biggest issue was actually to break through and really embrace where we were in the world. And where we were in the world was the most diverse place in America. Queens is a place where hundreds of languages are spoken. And actually, then there were a series of people who were from Queens who we hired who really kind of broke open the doors, let's say, and opened the doors for people in the community. So we did a lot of programming, both on and off site. And actually, it was a woman who grew up in India, Jayshree Abichandani, who was one of the key people right at the beginning, from Queens, grew up in Mumbai, and then moved to Queens when she was 15. So there were a series of people like that who had the knowledge of the community that really helped us open the doors. And I think that right now I'm writing another book, and this is about North American art museums. And I think, figuring out how to open the doors to different publics is key to the future of museums in the United States.
And we actually absolutely agree with this, because we are also building a very socially focused platform. So I'm glad to hear this from you. Okay, so your theory of social cooperation often applies to non-market art. How can commercial platforms like Elisium Art ethically adopt those core principles of community and collaboration?
It's such an interesting question. I mean, I think that my knowledge of your enterprise is that you're really trying to open the door for artists. I mean, this is you're trying to open the door for artists who are not necessarily in the largest centers of commercial artistic activity. There are incredibly talented artists all over the world. I mean, I know this. I was just actually in Uzbekistan last week, and there's the first Bukhara biennial. And so Central Asia is a place that's been really left out of the artistic mainstream for a long time. But the talent there is unbelievable. And, it's a very challenging place. It's not, the most democratic country in the world, but the creativity is amazing. And by the way, the creativity there in this Bukhara Biennale was both art world trained or art school trained artists and craftspeople were collaborating. So it's a really interesting enterprise. So I felt like that when I went with the group that I was with, my wife, etc., and we went to see the art at these various, it's called a caravanserai, it's part of the Silk Road. And these caravanserais are these old places that used to be the stopping places on the Silk Road. That's where the exhibitions were. That there were a lot of people from the general public were there. And so I don't think so I'm very interested in, like you say, Sylvia, in non-commercial artist activities, these community-based, cooperative, collaborative art projects. But I think opening the door for artists who do, work on canvas is equally important. And I think that the problem is, at least in the West, that there's just too big a tradition of very, I think, unproductive gatekeeping, and that bursting the doors open is extremely important.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. And actually, when you mentioned this combination between the craftsmanship and the art, I think that's a great way to see how everything basically joins in one single creativity aspect or world for these artists who don't have that many opportunities out there. But platforms
and
like
I think that even just the designation of what's craft and what's art is that's a kind of gatekeeping, right? That who's to say if somebody is making something and it's beautiful and it's creative, and you call it craft because essentially the person doesn't have maybe sometimes just the vocabulary to talk about it in relationship to the art world.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So this is kind of related to the third question, which is about your upcoming book, which critiques North American museums, to put it somehow. What is the single biggest structural opportunity beyond money that traditional museums must utilize to stay relevant today?
So first of all, the book that I'm working on is about North American art museums. So when I say North America, I'm not including the Caribbean. So Mexico, the United States, and Canada. And in the world right now, more or less, there are sort of three different systems for running museums. One is called the French system, which is the system where the state runs the museum. This is actually quite true in a lot of parts of Latin America and Asia as well. So it's state. So you walk in the door, the person that you're, selling you the ticket or the curator actually works for the government. That's the French system. The British system, which they have, so that's what they have in Mexico, is the French system. In Canada, they have the British system. And that is the system whereby there's a lot of public money, but it's done at what's called arm's length. It's not given by the government. These are private organizations. And those private organizations have much more freedom away from the government. And America has this private system, which is, essentially funded by the oligarchs of our country. That's who funds, for the most part, our museum system. So there are sort of issues and opportunities and problems with all of these. But what's happening right now in the United States is that the public museums, in other words, the Smithsonian Institution, we're beginning to see that if you are a government institution, the government can actually tell you what to do. So we have all kinds of censorship problems, which have been, part of that problem in a lot of countries around the world where the government runs the museum. So I think that the biggest question, you said outside of money, I think the biggest question is money. I have to disagree with your question, maybe I'd say that. But the biggest question for freedom of museums is how do you strike a balance between the private sector funding, which comes with strings attached because of let's say the oligarchs who are giving the money, and the public. So I'm writing this book with a friend who's actually from Mexico originally, Pablo Helguera. Pablo and I have decided that in a way, some kind of balanced funding is the best. And again, the purpose of all of this is to create truly democratic, open public institutions that still have, there's this in museums, the balance between like the forum and the temple, people say. And I think that they should be both. I think there is this almost proto-religious aspect of museums that is good. I'm not against it. That moment of reverence in relationship to a work of genius is great. But so all are, forums where, interesting and controversial issues are being discussed, and education programs that open the door for young people and old people, et cetera.
Absolutely. I do agree with that part of the education and programmers. So about this is a different aspect to it all, and regarding the market, the art market. So new technologies like AI and fractional ownership are shifting art from objects to data, basically. Does this dematerialization ultimately help or hurt the mission of cultural equity and access fought for at the DCLA?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. It's hard to say, but I would say that in general, what people want to experience when they're going to a museum and when they're working with a work of art is actually something that a human being created. That there's something about looking at something and understanding the skill and sensitivity and understanding that it was a human imagination that created that thing that's essential to the artistic experience. That having been said, I think there are all kinds of ways in which technology can enable it. So, right now I was just, before we got on, watching a hilarious AI created video, which was just, making politicians say stuff that they would never say. But it was presented, by the way, not as a deep fake, but as a humorous. And I think that, if you look around and you watch how people are making digital art now, there's, AI is enabling creativity, but the ultimate author is a human being, not a machine. So I think I'm really worried. I'm also a teacher, and I have just in the last 3 or 4 semesters has been the moment in which people are beginning to hand in papers that they did not write. Mm. And I find that very disturbing. So in my classes, you have to present everything in class without notes, and then you hand in the paper later. But I feel like there's all kinds of problems in terms of learning. But I also, I'm not looking forward to the day when I sit down and read a short story written by a machine, or go into a museum and look at a work of art created by a machine.
So there's an ongoing debate right now about an open call for artists from a recognized brand in Mexico. And what artists are arguing is that most of the finalists were presenting AI generated images or pieces. So of course, this is a debate that will last for a long time, I think. We have a long road ahead to work over these kind of themes.
So, but the question there is, okay, so who gave the instructions to the AI to make the work? And how detailed were the instructions? Because I think as a tool, I'm not against it. As an originator, I'm terrified.
Yeah, I absolutely get it. And actually, I came back from Mexico a few days ago, and I had a very interesting conversation with an artist in her studio, because she mentioned this, and I hadn't seen it this way, that an art piece is created with the energy of the artist, but it's actually when someone comes in and connects with it that the energy is released. And it was beautiful to see it this way, because I mean, I am very, very keen to energies and everything as an artist. I'm very sensible, but this was a beautiful way to name it out, because I do believe that the creator has everything to do with the meaning of the piece and what it is actually telling you and letting you feel.
Yeah, for sure. That's a very beautiful metaphor. I like that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. Okay. So about Elisium, we champion regional and indigenous artists. Based on your public policy experience, what one guideline must a digital platform follow to support these artists ethically?
I mean, I think the most important thing is to come to artists on their own terms. In other words, not try to, I think too many institutions try to get artists to comply in a way with their goal. So as long as, I think it's a great mission that you have. But the question is, are you doing something that is enabling the artists to go down the road that they want to go down? And so, every artist wants to make a living. And that's what you're going to help enable all these artists to make a living. You're selling work for artists that might have trouble finding markets. But the question then is, what are there implications, let's say locally, for the way that they interact with their communities as artists that need to be respected? I think that's the biggest question. And then so when we were talking about when I was commissioner of cultural affairs and we're a big funder of the arts, one of the things we try to do in this sort of equity mission is to support institutions that supported the artistic energies of their communities. Mm-hmm. And so that, I guess that would be my biggest question for your enterprise is, how does this very global enterprise support the local?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's all about the respect and recognition of the local identity of the pieces. And I think that's what we have to be very focused on bringing that into the communication that we set up at the platform.
And by the way, that's not something a machine can do. Mm. Like if you think about an artist that's embedded in a community in Latin America or in India, and they're drawing on these very specific life experiences with their family or their community. AI, they're drawing from the entire internet, from this, huge billions and billions of data points to create something that they think is going to be interesting to a theoretical audience. So I'd be very interesting to know if there will ever be something like hyper-local AI. Like AI that really knows how to communicate in a particular village in China or something like that. I would be fascinated to know that. It doesn't seem the way that's the way AI is going. AI, so Elisium can be very international and very local at the same time by supporting artists, but I don't think AI can do that yet.
Yes, I do agree with that. I think what AI is doing is pleasing people, but an artist's job is not necessarily to please anyone, but their own impulse.
Yeah, but the problem is AI is just getting started.
Yeah.
And AI already, I mean, I use AI to edit things sometimes, and the observations that AI make are incredible. The other thing is that AI is learning how I write, and it's getting better and better and better. So that idea of being a crazy avant-garde artist who's off, in left field doing something that nobody's ever done before, which is what we often treasure in new artists. I think AI, if it understands that that's what it's supposed to be doing, might be able eventually to do that as well. I hope, I'm sort of glad. I have a son who's in his 30s, and it's very worrisome what's going to happen to all the jobs that people want to do, including, maybe the arts.
Yes. Let's hope platforms like Elisium will be able to sustain the humanity to this part of the equation.
Yeah, sure.
And that's why we like to show for me, being an artist and talking about a platform that is supporting artists, it's made everything easier because people do connect with our mission in a different way, as if we are just showing a brand and an enterprise. So I hope the humanity behind all of this is what makes us different and makes us stand up out in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you went from running the Present for Art program to leading the entire DCLA. What is the biggest difference between administering a single art program and driving city-wide cultural policy?
Well, when you're the commissioner of cultural affairs is, so this is an agency that is the landlord for many of the largest cultural institutions in New York City, including the Metropolitan Museum, the Museum of Natural History, the Brooklyn Museum, the Queens Museum, etc. So you are all of a sudden one of the largest, or the largest funder of the arts in New York City. So that then became both a blessing and a curse. So, whatever. I was invited to every party. I was invited to the Met Gala, the most exclusive. But then on the other hand, sort of like you have to just go out every night. So a lot of it is just very symbolic. Like I would show up at an event and they didn't really care that I was there. They were cared that the commissioner was there. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden I had this symbolic value showing up at, galas and giving speeches. I was asked to give speeches all the time, whether or not I had even been asked or prepared. I would walk into an event, they'd ask me to speak. So it was a very public job. Percent for Art was working with artists, commissioning artworks. So, I'm happy I did the job, but it was just incredibly tense, overwhelming. And there's also just, in the world right now, and this is certainly true in New York, everybody's mad about everything.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people mad about what we were doing all the time. Mm-hmm. No matter, you can't base public policy on the idea of you can please everybody. So yeah, so it was a tense job. I'm happy I did it, and I'm very happy not to be doing it right now.
Okay, I absolutely get it. So when curating digital art, what is the biggest challenge in integrating pioneering works from the 1960s and 70s into the traditional art history canon?
That's interesting. I don't really have that much experience in curating digital art. I mean, I just organized a show at the Whitney Museum of an artist named Christine Sunkamp, and so I hadn't curated. I was a curator in the 80s, but I hadn't really curated shows for many decades. And it was very interesting to see how things had changed. And there was actually quite a bit of digital art in the show. And so but the advances in digital technology that I witnessed were, it's just become very reliable. When I was first a curator, you go into a show and half the stuff wasn't working because the technology was so new. Now it's just getting better and cleaner and bigger and more reliable. You have, digital technology technicians everywhere at museums these days. Back in those days, they had trouble figuring out how to get a VCR to repeat so that you didn't have to rewind it every time. So I think it's just become completely natural. Young people especially understand digital technology, even if it's not digital technology art. They're just like, they grew up with computers and digital devices in their hands all the time. So it's just become a natural, it's not so much, it's people don't go out of their way. How do I say it? It's not an unusual aspect of any show to have digital technology as part of it. It's just part of life.
But it was actually interesting. I went to Art Basel. I visited back in, I think it was 2015 for the first time. And then I came back last year. And in 2015, I saw a lot of digital pieces coming into the shows and into the booths. Also, the NFTs part in 2020, 21, it was taking over all of the event. But now, last year, I saw that painting had being the main form of art presented in all of the fairs. So have you seen this also, like people turning again into more traditional ways of creating art or consuming art?
Yeah. I mean, we call it like the analog backlash, right? So I do think so. I mean, I think NFTs, that was a crazy bubble. I don't understand. I didn't understand at the time the way that people are spending millions of dollars on something that they didn't even really own, right? They just had some sort of license. So I think that was crazy. I don't think the works themselves merited attention for the most part, the NFTs. But I do think that there's a lot of creativity still. Like when I went to the Bukhara Biennial, there were these incredible videos by people from Indonesia, particularly, I thought were great. So I think it's sort of becoming naturally part of it, but there's a difference between, let's say, digital artwork, where it's like digital animation versus just using whatever digital cameras to make a digital film.
Yeah. So let's hope we get back to more analog art eventually. Okay, so this is the last question because before we go to the short ones. You advocate for integrating art into civic life. Between augmented reality and virtual reality, which technology offers the most democratic path to public access, or any other technology?
I mean, when I talk about integrating art into everyday life, I mean, or into civic life, what I'm actually talking about is something different. Then I'll get to your question, which is something that started when I was commissioner, was something called the Public Artist in Residence program. So that meant that we hired artists, and this program has been going on for 10 years now. 3 or 4 artists per year are integrated into city government. And so you become the artist in resident at the Department of Homeless Services. There's actually a show coming up this week of a wonderful artist who's been working with homeless people in New York City. Or in the Department of Records, or the Department of Sanitation, or, Office of Human Rights. So these are integrating artists as visual artists, as visual problem solvers, as, people who think off the, out in left field or whatever, into these very structured governments. So that's what I'm talking about. But I would say that I've seen very good examples of augmented reality works, which, sort of put you in the space and then add this crazy element, digital element. So I've seen some of those that are highly successful. I don't think it's that big of a aspect of the art world at this very moment, at least in New York City. But I think there's a lot of potential there. This also depends on sort of how easy the interfaces are to use. Because often, you get some augmented and you have to it's a QR code and you have to download it and there's a new app and you don't know where to go. And eventually you get to something and there's this kind of fun, crazy element added, the augmented reality. But I still think we got a way to go before that becomes, really easy to use for audiences. I see a lot of people kind of trying to get the augmented reality to work. It doesn't always work in the very site-specific ones that I've seen in New York.
Okay, yeah. So we mentioned these technologies, but for sure we do advocate for technology, but as a way to widen the consumption of art, to put it somehow. Social media, for instance, is a way to reach more people, reach more audiences, and even the younger people who maybe don't visit a museum that often, but are able to see art or consume art every day. So it's definitely changing.
That which is that I feel like, we're in a situation where across the world, politics is becoming polarized in a way that's very, very upsetting to anybody who cares about democracy. And one of the reasons for that is what's called the amplification of outrage on social media. That the algorithms don't care what the content is. They just care that the content is being looked at by very large amounts of people. So I feel like that one of the things that museums and that fine arts can do is become an alternative to social media, to say that in the analog, in that real experience of looking at a real thing in real space, you can have an experience that's more profound than the kind of addictive, reductive kinds of experiences that you have on social media. Now, that having been said, I'm on Instagram. I just want to let you know, I'm not, saying I'm off in some, beautiful museum every day. So I do spend time on it, but I don't like it. And I wish I was spending less time on it. But it is, I don't think that the traditions of art have to do with addiction. But I do think that that's what social media is about.
Yes, you're right. And I also agree that the traditional or the physical experience will never replace the digital experience of seeing an art piece or being close to the creation process. So
yeah,
I absolutely agree with this, and we'll have to be very careful on what we put out there in the future for brands.
So, I mean, it could be a tool. In other words, it could be a marketing tool. If your eventual goal is to get, beautiful works of art into the hands of people, collectors that don't have them, having a tool be social media to get it there, that's great. That's fine. Everybody does it.
That's the best way to put it. It's a tool, not the replacement of the other experience. Okay, Tom. So we're gonna move now on to the rapid response segment. So these are short questions, and we, if you could answer in 1 or 2 sentences, that would be
great. Give it a try.
Okay. So, commissioner of the DCLA or director of the Queen's Museum?
The commissioner was more power, and the director of the Queen's Museum was more fun.
Okay, great. PS1 loft parties of the 80s or present for art commissions in the 90s?
I mean, PS1, I was young. Being young is more fun. And there's a lot of tension involved in public art.
Great. The most essential part of the 68 million Queen's Museum renovation, more exhibition space or new community organizer positions?
We boiled our mission statement down to one word, which was openness. That was the key to the architecture and the key to the community organizers.
Great. Topic of your next book?
How can museums open the doors?
Dialogues in Public Art from 2000 or What We Made from 2013. Which book do you feel is more urgently relevant today?
Dialogues in Public Art was unique. It sold a lot more copies because there weren't other books. But I think that What We Made is more relevant to today.
We're gonna add the names of the books in the video when we publish it. When selling art online, what creates more trust?
I think trust is created in the end product of the sale. You're gonna build trust by people getting something that they have in their home that they love and telling other people.
Great. The human aspect to it then.
Mm-hmm.
Princeton BA by 79 or Hunter MFA from 83. Which academic environment prepared you best for the realities of public office?
Hunter College for sure, because it's in New York City. It's the People's College, but I had a great undergraduate experience at Princeton as well.
And then the last one, Queen's Museum or Times Square Arts? Where did you face the fiercest bureaucratic battle?
So just to be clear, I didn't work at Times Square Arts.
Oh, okay. But where do you see the bureaucratic battle?
Yeah, so Queen's Museum was a moment of professional bliss for me. I had a staff I loved. It was a job I never would have left, except I felt I had to go become commissioner to be true to my values.
Great. So what I can see from talking to you is the profound love you have for this work you do. And I'm really grateful for the honor of being able to interview you here for our first chapter in this new series for the Elisium platform. Thank you Tom, so much for your time, for your openness, and for giving us all of this time and putting your experience toward a cause like this one.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you very much.